Good afternoon, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the SCCCI, I welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar on the market outlook and business opportunities in the Philippines. While COVID-19 has made many companies focus on their near-term challenges at home, I'm pleased to note that many businesses are also keen to be updated on the latest developments and opportunities within ASEAN. And it certainly gives us something to look forward to post-COVID. This afternoon, we will focus on the Philippines. The Philippines is one of the fastest growing economies in Southeast Asia. I think most of us who operate businesses are attracted by its young English-speaking workforce, abundant manpower resources, and relatively large consumer base. Before this pandemic, the Philippines had been growing at a strong rate of above 6% for several consecutive years. Of course, like all economies currently, the Philippines has also been hit by the pandemic and is projected to shrink by about 5% this year. The government has introduced support measures to help local businesses and households. And with new infection cases emerging, businesses are now closely watching how the Philippines government will be weighing the trade-offs between opening up the economy and public health. Prior to the pandemic, the Philippines have been embarking on a spate of infrastructure development projects across the country. The Duarte administration has introduced more than 100 infrastructure development projects all throughout the Philippines. These projects, which include roads, bridges, airports, utilities, power and communications, will all drive the country's economic recovery and growth moving ahead. Singapore and the Philippines have robust economic ties. Just last year, both countries celebrated the 50th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relationships. In recent years, Singapore has consistently been a top investor and trading partner in the Philippines. Singapore companies are not unfamiliar with the Philippines. Over the years, many of our companies have established a presence there. Keppel Corporation has been involved in the Philippines infrastructure sector. With a huge and young consumer base, some of our F&B, retail, and technology players also have a presence in the Philippines as well. Such local well-known brands as BreadTalk, Charles & Keith, Grab, Carousel, and Shopee are all looking to tap opportunities in the Philippines. We are also involved, Singapore companies are also involved in quite a wide spectrum of other sectors in the Philippines, including real estate, manufacturing, infrastructure, solar energy. Today we have a distinguished panel of speakers who will be sharing with us the latest developments and opportunities in the Philippines. I urge all of you to participate actively and also to look forward to the future opportunities post-COVID. We must all be positive and look towards a period where the dark days we currently feel that we are in will recede. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors, OCBC and UOB, for partnering us to make this initiative possible. Last but not least, I also want to express my sincere appreciation to our government partners, the Philippines Department of Trade and Industry, for this session and for your strong support. I wish everyone a fruitful and productive session ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, VP Kwa. Okay, and now let me introduce our first speaker of the day. We are happy to have with us Dr. Rafaelita Aldaba, Undersecretary for Competitiveness and Innovation of the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry, DTI. She fulfills a key role in the formulations and implementations of the Inclusive Innovations Industrial Strategy, which puts innovations at the heart of the country's new industrial policy. She'll be talking about some of the key changes implemented by the Philippines government post-COVID and opportunities and investments that foreign businesses should explore after the crisis. Dr. Aldaba, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all staying safe and well in these trying times. And thank you to the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's really a great pleasure to join today's webinar on Philippines thriving in the next future of ASEAN. Now, I divided my presentation into 4 parts. First, we will discuss the country's growth performance. Then we move on to our new industrial policy, which is known as Inclusive Innovation Industrial Strategy, or ICUBS. The next part will present our economic recovery plans and programs. Then the last part will share some lessons from our pandemic experience in the last 6 months and the outlook for the next future. Okay, I would like to start by highlighting our people who are our main source of comparative advantage and competitiveness. The Philippines has a young population. We are in a sweet spot with our rich talent pool, median age of 24, highly skilled, highly trainable with a fast learning curve, English proficient, and highly customer and services oriented. The Philippines is a story of a country that has been seen as an economic star with average growth of 6.4% in the last 10 years. And just as we reached an inflection point, the pandemic hit us. And like most countries, our growth contracted in the first half of this year by minus 8.6%. And this brought the country in its first recession since 1998 during the Asian financial crisis. Now, manufacturing and services contributed largely to the strong growth during the period 2010 to 2019, with manufacturing growing at an average rate of 5.8%, while services posted 7.2%. And manufacturing was actually at the cusp of a resurgence with the crisis, the industry contracted by 12.6%. Note, however, that despite this contraction, the country's macro fundamentals remain solid and strong. The Philippines entered the crisis with room for fiscal policy support. As you can see on the slide, tax reform increased the ratio of tax to GDP from 13% in 2015 to 14.5% in 2019. The fiscal deficit averaged only 2.4% in 2015 to 2019. Ratio of government debt to GDP fell to a record low of 39.6% in 2019. Debt rose to equal 48.1% of GDP at the end of June 2020 on higher borrowing to fund programs to address the pandemic. Now, investment grade credit ratings have been affirmed by Fitch Ratings, Moody's Investors Service, and Standard & Poor's, despite these economic headwinds. Inflation has been low and continued to remain within the 2 to 4% target of the government. Now, looking at our external accounts, you can see that a current account surplus of 0.1% of GDP in the first quarter of 2020 actually reversed a 2% deficit in Q1 of 2019. Merchandise exports fell in US dollar terms by 4.3%, while imports declined by 10.3%, narrowing the merchandise trade deficit from 14.5% of GDP last year to 11.6%. Services exports, especially tourism, declined significantly. The net inflow of foreign direct investment shrank. Portfolio investment reversed to net outflow, and so our BOP fell from a surplus equal to 4.5% of GDP in the first quarter of 2019 to a 0.1% deficit. The foreign exchange reserves stood at $98 billion in July 2020, providing cover for more than 8 months of service and income payments, as well as imports of goods. And the Philippine peso appreciated by 4.7% against the US dollar in the year, during the year. Now, as quarantine measures are relaxed and more sectors reopen, we see improvements in the Purchasing Managers Index, Value and Volume of Production Index, which you can see on the slide. And as you know, these are indicators of business sentiment. Although, of course, we are still in the contractionary territory, but all these improvements show that the trends tend, they tend to show that the worst is over in June. Now, looking at unemployment, this also dropped from 17.7% in the second quarter of this year to 10% in Q3. And in fact, as you can see, there's a net of 7.5 million jobs that were restored by July 2020. Now, we were in the process of implementing our new industrial policy, which is known as I-S, when COVID-19 hit us. This new strategy focuses on innovation and aims to grow globally competitive and innovative industries by embracing Industry 4.0 technologies to create new products and services, new business models, and closing the gaps in our domestic supply chain and deepening our participation in global value chains. The strategy has 4 other major pillars. It focuses on linking together innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. This is crucial. The strong collaboration between and among government, academia, and industry is crucial as we try to accelerate the commercialization of R&D investments with focus on market-oriented research. We are also reskilling and upskilling our workforce, equipping them with new digital skills and make them Industry 4.0 ready. Another vital pillar is, of course, the development of innovative MSMEs and startups, along with improving ease of doing business. Now, this slide illustrates our framework, the adoption of new technologies, which can lead to more innovation that would result in the creation of new products and services in the market, resulting in more quality jobs, higher incomes, emergence of new industries, as well as environmental goods. And these are major steps that could lead to a more inclusive, resilient, and sustainable industrial development. We are prioritizing the following industries and economic activities. As you can see, we have here sectors from manufacturing, from agriculture, fishery, forestry, services, particularly public utilities, along with new technologies, as well as promoting innovation. We would like more investments towards the modernization of our agriculture sector, improving logistics, cold chain and warehousing, health products, food manufacturing, Industry 4.0 technologies, and products in electronics and electrical, chemicals, furniture, auto, electric vehicles, climate change products and services, shipbuilding and the services sector, particularly IT, creative industry, transport, logistics, along with health and online education. Now, in this next slide, I am showing to you the more specific sectors that we've identified. For example, in electronics, we want more investments in R&D, in IC design, along with smart factories, smart products, consumer electronics, auto electronics, and medical devices. Now, using technologies like voice recognition, AI, AR, augmented reality, mixed reality, robotics, 5G connectivity, and industrial Internet of Things, we can create new products or solutions in the following areas: smart buildings and smart home technology, digital health, e-gaming, smart assistants, vehicle technology, resilient technology, along with audio, video, and edtech. Now, at this point, I would like to share with you the results of a technology utilization survey that we conducted last year. And this survey helped us to understand the Industry 4.0 readiness of Filipino firms and industry. And as you can see, across the different manufacturing sectors, the highest technology utilization is found in other non-metallic products, in paper and paper products, computer, electronic, and optical products, motor vehicles, basic pharmaceutical products, as well as in printing and reproduction of recorded media. The results also showed that the bulk of our enterprises are actually aware of Industry 4.0. 77% of those surveyed, these are the micro enterprises, are open or familiar with Industry 4.0. 67% for small and medium enterprises, and 83% of large enterprises are open or familiar with Industry 4.0. As to the primary considerations for Industry 4.0 transformation, the most important to the companies are the improvement in productivity and competitiveness, followed by cost of investment and funding, innovation, and technological advancement. The companies see the following barriers in terms of adopting these new technologies, and these are lack of financial capability, market conditions, and poor digital infrastructure. And we also asked them how do they overcome these barriers, and according to the firms, they are formulating their internal corporate strategies, they're looking at prospective loan applications, and carrying out or intensifying their R&D activities. In terms of planned investment in the next 5 years, 75% of large enterprises would invest in software. But on the overall, more than 45% of surveyed companies are more likely to invest in machinery, in employee training, and software in the coming 5 years. We know that automation and AI technologies will accelerate the shift in skills that the workforce needs. And so the demand for digital skills will continue to accelerate, while the demand for physical and manual skills will decline. And to see how these jobs are evolving in the Philippines, we see from the LinkedIn 2020 Emerging Jobs Report that the digital economy is actually driving the country's emerging jobs. On top would be a robotics engineer, cybersecurity specialists, including customer success specialists. So on the overall, it's the software engineers and developers who are critical for businesses that are pursuing digital transformation. We have lined up the following Industry 4.0 readiness initiatives. We are working with the UNIDO in crafting our Industry 4.0 roadmaps for electronics, for automotive, aerospace, and agribusiness. We are also conducting a feasibility study for the establishment of an Industry 4.0 pilot factory together with an Industry 4.0 SME Academy that would provide Industry 4.0 trainings to our MSMEs. We are also working with the university in terms of crafting an AI roadmap that aims to make the Philippines an AI center of excellence. And together with other government agencies, we are also formulating an Industry 4.0 human resource development roadmap. We are seeking support for the implementation of the SMART program. This is securing manufacturing revitalization and transformation towards Industry 4.0. And the aim of this program is to provide fiscal and non-fiscal assistance to companies that are shifting to Industry 4.0 technologies. We are also creating and promoting the EV industry. We are creating the EV ecosystem because this is one of the top priorities of our industrial policy. We, of course, fully recognize the potential growth of this industry and the need for us to prepare for the future, and to successfully jumpstart the development of the industry and carry out as well the shift to electrified vehicles, we are planning to implement the EV incentive program, which aims to provide time-bound, targeted, performance-based, and transparent fiscal and non-fiscal support to the EV industry. And it would cover not only EV manufacturing, but as well as crucial EV parts, such as electronic parts and other strategic components like batteries, charging facilities, and other crucial parts. And as you can see, it's a comprehensive strategy that we are pursuing. It has, apart of course from the industry development component, there are 4 other elements, such as the regulations, ensuring that we have an enabling EV regulatory environment, information, education, and communication, human resource development, and R&D. There are also 2 very important legislations that were approved last year in order to promote innovation and startups. And these are the Philippine Innovation Act and the Innovative Startup Act. Now, these 2 laws are crucial in providing the necessary resources that are needed to promote innovation, as well as to boost the growth and development of our startup ecosystem. We are also building the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystems in the regions through our regional inclusive innovation centers. Now, these RIICs serve as platforms, linking together the different stakeholders like the universities, the funders, R&D labs and S&T parks, accelerators, co-working spaces, the large, small, medium enterprises, and the startups. And the focus is on addressing industry issues and societal problems, applying technological solutions. And right now, we have 4 pilot areas, one in Legazpi, another one is in Cebu, and down in the south, we have Cagayan de Oro and Davao. This is where ideation, design workshops, and R&D multi-stakeholder engagements are happening in collaboration with other government agencies, as well as partners from the academe. Next, we are implementing the following strategies to restore confidence and domestic demand as we transition towards the new normal. We are intensifying the implementation, as well as information, education, communication of our strategy to address the COVID-19 problem. We are, as you can see, this is the strategy. We call it PDITR, prevent, detect, isolate, treat, and reintegrate. The second one is more towards the industry, but ensuring that we are able to stockpile our PPE, and hence we're creating the PPE ecosystem, and that would help us manufacture these PPE products along with other essential goods. Support for modernizing the agricultural sector, again, is very important, as we've seen in our experience over the last 6 months, minimizing the disruptions in our value chains and supply chains, as well as ensuring that we have an efficient logistics sector, extending financial assistance, intensifying our retooling and upskilling programs, providing more alternative livelihood options, job matching services, and the digital transformation of our MSMEs. And of course, we are resuming the Build, Build, Build program of the government, along with improving and investing in digital infrastructure. We are also promoting ecological activities, along with the safe and sufficient reopening of our public transportation system. The second phase of our recovery program, we call it BAYANIHAN, has just been approved. This was signed a couple of days ago. Now, this is a package amounting to 165.5 billion pesos to be implemented until December of this year. And to strengthen the health sector, financial support would be provided to aid health workers. Funds will also be provided to increase testing, expand hospital capacity, hire more health workers, and provide risk allowances to our healthcare workers. Social amelioration programs for low-income households, farmers, and fisher folks would also be funded, along with programs for our displaced workers and for our repatriated overseas foreign workers. To support our business recovery, MSMEs in particular and critical industries, fiscal and non-fiscal support will be provided to ensure adequate supply of essential goods and services, PPE production, credit availability for MSMEs and cooperatives, expansion of microfinance programs, acceleration of e-commerce, creative industry, providing grace period on rents, as well as guaranteed loan portfolio. This next slide presents to us our strategy. It's called Rebuild PH, meaning revitalizing businesses, investments, livelihoods, and domestic demand. This Rebuild strategy prioritizes the development of the following industries, which are also quite similar to the earlier priorities that I've shown to you. We just reclassified them into the basic necessities, such as agribusiness and food manufacturing, health products and online education and health services, Industry 4.0 activities, particularly in electrical and electronics, innovation and R&D, addressing supply chain gaps by investing more in tool and die, along with iron and steel, and in chemicals. Of course, we're also promoting a more modern Philippines through expanding our investments in infrastructure, in smart cities, in shipbuilding, digital trade, transport, logistics, telecoms, along with renewable energy. And for high value jobs, we're focusing on furniture, on textile, garments, aerospace parts, tourism, creative industry, as well as in the IT sector. Now, just to share with you, this is our current existing environment in terms of the incentive system that the country is currently implementing. There are various investment promotion agencies providing different types of incentives. But here I'm showing to you the incentives provided by two investment promotion agencies. This is the Board of Investments and the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, both of which are providing up to a maximum of 8 years of income tax holiday. But the difference is for those registering under the Philippine Economic Zone Authority, they are given a special tax rate of 5% on gross income. Now, for the other IPAs, such as those in Clark as well as in Subic, they don't offer income tax holiday, but they have only the special tax rate of 5% on gross income. We are actually modernizing our corporate taxation and incentive system through the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises, or the CREATE Act. Now, the aim is to make our system more relevant and responsive to the needs of businesses, especially those who are now facing financial difficulties. And CREATE is going to reduce our corporate income tax from the current 30% to 25% in 2020 up to 2022. And then there's going to be a 1% reduction every year to reach 20% by 2027. We are offering three major types of incentives. And let me also note that under the CREATE, the incentives will be more uniform across the different investment promotion agencies. So apart from income tax holiday, there would be a special corporate income tax along with enhanced deductions that would cover depreciation allowances on assets, additional deduction on labor expenses, reinvestment and increment of domestic input expense, including power expense, R&D trainings, and infrastructure development. Now, there are other priority legislations that would include further opening up the economy, such as those that would liberalize foreign direct investment restrictions, particularly in terms of ownership and capital requirements. For instance, we are lowering as well the minimum paid up capital for foreign-owned retail trade businesses. We are also allowing up to 100% foreign ownership in public services like power, telecommunication, and transportation. And these bills are already in the advanced stage of deliberation, both at the House and at the Senate. Hopefully, they'll be passed soon. Now, in this slide, let me just share with you our manufacturing repurposing strategy program. At the height of the pandemic, one particular issue we had was the shortage of PPEs. We do not have a PPE industry, and we were largely dependent on imports of medical grade PPE. But as countries restricted their PPE exports, prices rose tremendously. And so for the Philippines at the height of the pandemic, really it became very difficult for us. And some of our doctors were forced to use raincoats and garbage bags to protect themselves. And what was most alarming and tragic was the high death rate among our doctors due to the lack of proper PPE. So why am I telling you this? Because it was amid this situation when we implemented the manufacturing repurposing program that aims to repurpose manufacturing activities toward the production of COVID critical products like PPE, ventilators, and test kits. A group of garments and electronics companies actually formed the Confederation of Philippine Manufacturers of PPEs, and they invested around $35 million US, and currently they are employing 7,450 workers. Now, for the UP, National Institute for Health, the UP is our state university. It also created the Gen Amplify COVID-19 test kit, and this is now currently being manufactured in the country. There are also other electronics companies like EMS, Everwin, and IMI that expanded their plants to produce surgical masks, IR thermometers, and ventilators. Through the application of new technologies like AI, big data, and fintech, Filipino startups also helped in addressing COVID-19 issues, such as contact tracing, social distancing, community monitoring, health assessment monitoring, along with supply chain disruptions. And tech startups that were able to adjust their operations quickly have been experiencing rising demand for their products and services, particularly for those in logistics, transport, fintech, healthcare, edtech, e-commerce, and digital services. Now in this next slide, I want to present to you the current state of COVID-19 in the country. As of, to date, there are a total of 269,407 cases, 207,352 recoveries. There were 27,261 cases in the last 7 days, and that's 25 cases per 100,000 population. Total deaths, 4,663, or 4 per 100,000 population. And in the last 7 days, we saw 740,000 cases, and so per 1,000, that's 0.7 per 100,000 population. In terms of active cases, there are only 57,392, and most of which are mild cases. And based on the New York Times COVID World Map Tracker, which you can see on the slide, the Philippines is among the countries where new cases are lower and staying low. In the same group are countries like Germany, Singapore, South Korea, Australia, Pakistan, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey. So what lessons can we draw from this recent experience? Number one, we need to restore confidence in order to bring back economic growth. ending lockdowns alone is not enough to restore confidence. We need to control and manage COVID-19 in order for us to resume growth. Confidence can be restored as we see low new case counts, as we implement more widespread testing, sufficient public health measures, having effective communication in place, and more mobility of people to travel and commute to work, to shop, or to go to parks. At the same time, the crisis has also offered new opportunities for us to discover new, better, and more resilient ways of doing things using new technologies like AI, industrial Internet of Things, blockchain, robotics, e-commerce, and digital trade. Now, all of these new technologies will shape the high-tech, no-touch, contactless era of the future. We have also observed that enterprises with greater innovation emerged resilient and even recorded gains amid the slowdown. And we also see the important role of Industry 4.0 in the post-pandemic landscape. Industry 4.0 can help us ensure the survival of more companies, shorten the adaptation and recovery phase of businesses, and they can also help us in terms of providing the platforms to develop new, more resilient products, processes, and systems from the medium run to the long run. Now, this is my last slide. I'm just glad that the ADB estimates were released yesterday. So now I'm sharing them with you. For the Philippines, the ADB expects a contraction of 7.3% for 2020. And the report also cites that consumer confidence and business sentiment will slowly recover in the second half of 2020 as the fiscal stimulus measures gain traction. The report also notes that advanced countries will recover in 2021 with GDP growth rebounding by 4% in the US, 6% in EU, and 2% in Japan. And as the virus is contained and as fiscal support bolster the economy, and with global recovery, we know that we fully expect that the Philippines is going to grow by 6.5% in 2021. And it's the same level, same figure in Malaysia, 6.5% by 2021, 6.3 in Vietnam, 5.9 in Cambodia, Indonesia is 5.3, Thailand is 4.5. So I'm going to stop here. Back to you, Tiffany. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Audaba. Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I believe many of the participants really gained great insights from you on understanding the whole Philippine economy and what are the key places to invest in. Now, let us proceed on. Next up, we have with us Attorney Amanda Capo, Country Head Philippines at Incorp Global, a practicing lawyer. She concentrates her legal practice on corporate and tax law, providing assistance to startups, SME, and multinational companies on their market entry plans, business operations, and tax compliance in the Philippines. She'll be sharing more about the key considerations that companies should take note of before venturing into the country, as well as common mistakes that foreign companies make in terms of legal, taxes, and business regulations. Amanda, please.
So good afternoon, everyone. And I'd like to thank the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Tiffany, Mr. Kua, Irene, and my fellow speakers from the DTI and Ops Solutions for the opportunity to have this dialogue with you. The last time we had an event with the SCCCI in Manila, it was quite a different time. Today, we face an economic crisis unlike any other caused by the COVID-19 virus. There's opportunity in crisis, though. The Chinese word for crisis, and please correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, is weiji. Two characters, and the first character represents danger, and the second is opportunity. We're in the middle or the beginning of a pandemic, the eye of the storm, if you will. And the purpose here today is to take you above the storm so that you can recognize the crisis and hopefully see the other side of it. Most success is won during preparation. And it's our job, it's my job, to prepare you, hopefully, for doing business in the Philippines in the future. This presentation comes in two parts. The first discusses the Philippine economy and opportunities in the Philippines. And the second part discusses the regulatory climate and legal issues about doing business in the Philippines against the backdrop of a pandemic. Oops. So as Dr. Aldaba had also pointed out, I'd like to take you on a time machine again to the pre-COVID Philippines, where we were one of the fastest growing economies in the world. I think these stats are pretty consistent with low stable inflation, likely to become an upper middle economy, strong fiscal position, et cetera, et cetera. I think these point to the good demographics that the Philippines has. This is attributed mostly by our NEDA, our National Economic Development Authority, to conservative and responsible fiscal management, tax reforms, structural reforms, and the Build program, increased infrastructure spending in the Philippines. Post-COVID, however, the largest problems are in liquidity, cash flow, and supply shock. While 2019 started its first quarter with a 5.7% growth in GDP, which rose to 6.7% in the final quarter, in the first quarter of 2020, GDP contracted 0.2% in an early sign of the fallout from more than 2 months of the COVID-related lockdown. Our 2-decade growth streak slowed down and will result in a negative 3.4% GDP growth for 2020. Defining the crisis and its cause is kind of crucial to resolving it. So again, with liquidity, cash flow, and supply shocks at the heart of the pandemic, and these are at the heart of the economic impact of COVID. For affected businesses, as most of you know, that means the inability to sustain operations, reduction in demand, reduction in workforce, and so on and so forth. No business has been spared. This has resulted in a recession. Technically speaking, that refers to a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced in 2 successive quarters. So we've already had that. But is this the tip of the iceberg? I think that some common issues, the most common issue that's felt by any business, at least the ones that we've been advising, are liquidity risks. They're running out of, a lot of businesses, because of lower demand, have low revenues, and cash flow has become a huge issue. So there's a heightened liquidity risk that's being faced by most companies, whether foreign or domestic, especially small and medium enterprises, which are the types of business that we typically advise. On the same note, though, because we have good inflation dynamics, lower domestic and global demand has given our central bank the leeway to ease policy interest rates and to support the economy amid the ravages of the pandemic. Since May 2019, the central bank has been cutting rates by a total of 200 basis points, unwinding the 175 basis points hike in 2018 and bringing the overnight repurchase rate to a record low of 2.75%. It's also gradually slashing commercial banks' reserve requirements ratio to 12% from 18% in June. So the BSP has significantly intervened to help the current crisis by lowering the reserve requirement ratios and reducing the minimum liquidity ratio requirement for standalone thrift, rural, and cooperative banks effectively until the end of the year, and provided flexibility for banks to use their capital and liquidity buffers. So banks are now allowed to draw down on their 2.5% minimum capital conservation buffer and from its stock of highly liquid assets without breaching regulatory requirements, subject to certain conditions. So what this means is the central bank is doing its part to help with this liquidity. again, the strategic response to COVID by the government, I think, has already been covered, but the pillars are emergency support for vulnerable groups in terms of wage subsidies, soft loans, credit guarantees to medium, small enterprises, and cash assistance, medical resources to fight COVID-19, fiscal and monetary actions to finance emergency initiatives, and an economic recovery program. As also mentioned by Dr. Aldaba earlier, we have the BAYANIHAN 1 and the BAYANIHAN 2, which has expanded the coverage and increased the budget, so to speak, to help these 4 pillars. So again, these are the forecasts. And they're kind of sobering figures. There's much higher unemployment expected due to the quarantines that have been taking place, and so the government response has been through passage of the BAYANIHAN 1, BAYANIHAN 2, the resumption of the build, easing liquidity and equity infusion, targeted tax incentives, the CREATE, which was also discussed earlier. And the Balik Probinsya, and some of the incentives that were discussed earlier on as well. One of the key points here is the tax incentives and the economic liberalization bills. These have not yet been passed, and these are crucial to foreign investors coming into the Philippines. So we're waiting with bated breath for Congress to pass these key pieces of legislation. I'll move to some of the best prospects in the Philippines for businesses. These are in ICT, cybersecurity, software, smart cities, consumer electrics, healthcare, energy, franchising, and infrastructure. So the Philippines will spend about, speaking of ICT, the Philippines will spend about $4.4 billion on digital infrastructure over the next 6 years, pandemic or not. Priority subsectors are cybersecurity, the cloud, and telecommunications. The Armed Forces of the Philippines will be undertaking a 15-year modernization program that started in 2012 and will continue to 2027. The total cost of the program over the span of 15 years is projected to be over $40 billion. And so that means that there's opportunities that exist in aircraft, ships, unmanned vehicles, intelligence and surveillance systems, communication, PPEs, and weapon systems. The build, which we keep coming back to, is an $180 billion that will be spent on projects that include airports, ports, bridges, roads, and rail infrastructure. So opportunities exist for firms to compete on project tenders through the Government Appropriations Act. The four leading subsectors with commercial opportunities are cybersecurity. So we have a robust social media savvy population. Everybody's on their cell phones with few data protection mechanisms. And so that makes the Philippines very vulnerable to cyber attacks and incidents. In 2019, one study placed the Philippines as the 5th country most likely to be attacked. And in 2019, Microsoft documented that the Philippines could incur economic losses of $3.5 billion due to cybersecurity threats. The government has the Data Privacy Act of 2012, and that law sets data protection standards and recommends all entities to hire a data privacy officer. However, there's limited enforcement, so you can see where the opportunities for companies that are engaged in cybersecurity are very much present. The government will need to purchase cybersecurity solutions, and the immediate opportunities are in the private sectors, especially especially as companies are transitioning to work from home arrangements. As you probably know, those work from home arrangements are not on secure networks, and there's a lot of data that's going unprotected. The DICT has launched a national cybersecurity plan, which has 2 components. The first is is a $10 million investment by creating the National Computer Emergency Response Team, or NCERT, and the Security Operations Center. The second, valued at $40 million, is a rollout of cybersecurity infrastructure from hardware to software, including capacity building training for all the national and local government agencies. Software and services is also another opportunity. Data hosting. This is expected to grow as more firms seek to use cloud solutions for efficiency and resilience purposes. I think most of us who have had to transition to work from home have had to also familiarize themselves with business continuity processes, and this means everything must be on the cloud. The BPO industry is one of the biggest consumers of software solutions in the Philippines, and that's an industry valued at $24 billion, at least as of 2018. The government is also a potential consumer as it works on the Philippine digital transformation strategy. I think this was also mentioned by Dr. Aldabo, the budget of $800 million for 2020. The strategy seeks to improve digital infrastructure, interconnectivity, ease of doing business through innovative tools and solutions. Another opportunity is smart cities, where there are a lot of cities with budgets for investment in infrastructure, but I think the larger investment might come from the private sector and real estate developers trying to create smart cities. So this is another opportunity for market entry. Telecommunications is another opportunity. The Philippines is dominated by two major players, PLDT and Globe Telecom, and so it's a saturated market with a duopoly that does not foster competition. However, new entrants are hesitant to enter the market because of foreign ownership restrictions. Once those are lifted, I think the market will really open up, and I think the two players could stand a lot of competition. And as that happens, they can get greater control of their companies and will be able to pursue the market as planned. So that's another area for under the ICT, as well as consumer electronics, led by the mobile device market. The Philippine consumer electronics market spending should reach about $8 billion, and spending alone in 2020 should be $6 billion. I do not believe that this is affected by the pandemic, simply because most people will turn to technology when in order to continue to work. The next sector is healthcare. So there's opportunities in both medical device and pharmaceutical sectors. The Philippine medical device market is almost totally dependent on imports and continues to present opportunities. 100% of medical equipment and 50% of medical disposables are imported. Local production is usually limited just to accessories and spare parts and disposables, such as surgical gloves, syringes, and needles. So we're more familiar with this industry because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The other area is pharmaceuticals. The Philippines is the third largest pharmaceutical market in the ASEAN, after Indonesia and Thailand. Due to the pandemic, the Department of Health has delayed many intended procurements and is facing budget challenges. The ongoing policy changes include a new health technology assessment policy and a maximum drug retail pricing policy, which continue to present challenges for firms. So again, all these challenges are opportunities for businesses coming into the Philippines. Energy is another area of possible investment. The Philippines is facing a mounting energy crisis because the Malampaya gas fields, from which we rely on a significant portion of our energy, 30% of the consumption in Luzon is expected to be depleted by 2024. That's just around the corner. With a steadily increasing population, the Philippines needs to find new sources of energy. So they will require 43 gigawatts by 2040. The Philippines will require 43 gigawatts by 2040. And the Philippines needs to develop some solutions for that. So finally, again, and I keep saying the build, build, build. So infrastructure projects again, and these range over construction, ICT, etc. This sort of covers the whole gamut. That sort of infrastructure spending is an opportunity for businesses coming in. So I will get to part 2 of my presentation. Doing business in the Philippines. So typically companies come in through a domestic corporation, a branch, a representative office, ROHQ, or we have one-person corporations, which are similar to LLCs. Capitalization requirement is generally $200,000 if you are a domestic market enterprise. But there's no capitalization requirement if you're export oriented, meaning that at least 60% of your output is exported, whether that is a sale of goods or services. Representative offices, which are non-revenue generating entities, must have a $30,000 annual remittance, which would cover the costs of the company. So minimum paid up capitalization, general rule is no, unless you are a domestic market enterprise, as earlier mentioned, 200,000, or you are in the foreign investment negative list. I get this question a lot when you're forming a company. We have to, if you're forming a corporation, these are the officers and directors that are required. You must have at least 3 officers, a president, treasurer, and a secretary. The directors, a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 15. Incorporators or shareholders, you should have 2 to 15 persons, and persons refers to natural persons of legal age or juridical entities or SEC registered partnerships, corporations, or a foreign corporation. We move to the foreign investment negative list. This is something that is very important for people doing business in the Philippines because it usually has an equity or an investment requirement. So no foreign equity is allowed in these businesses: mass media, practice of professions, small scale mining, marine resources, use of marine resources. Actually, renewable energy would be included in that, as the wind, geothermal is considered the natural resources of the Philippines. Weapons manufacture, firecrackers, pyrotechnic devices, etc. So 25% for private recruitment, 30% for advertising, 40%. These are regulated businesses, and typical. I list here some of the typical ones. If you are engaged in the retail trade, there is a investment requirement of $2.5 million. And again, domestic market enterprises, all those which are not on the foreign investment negative list, but are also not export industries and will deal with Philippine customers, are considered domestic market enterprises under our foreign investment negative list. Foreign Investments Act, and will require a $200,000 minimum paid-in capital requirement. Those are funds which belong to the company, but which the SEC will need to see invested in, present in the books of the company. So starting a business in the new normal in the Philippines, one of the major issues is that you're not allowed to go. Travel is restricted. Immigration issues and closed borders are an issue. No foreigners are allowed to enter the Philippines, with certain exceptions for residents, spouses, and certain visa holders. 9G or working visa holders are not allowed to enter the Philippines as of yet. So that's definitely a restriction. Lots of businesses are forced to go digital. Business registration is possible, even without being physically present in the Philippines. And we might, I can discuss that probably later on. And obviously any business will have to take note of our IATF regulations. This is the body formed by different branches of the government to handle the COVID crisis. So in terms of some of the issues that are facing businesses in the Philippines in terms of labor, obviously one of the major issues is the work from home arrangements and how to handle those in terms of monitoring employees. Our Department of Labor and Employment has encouraged flexible work arrangements. They do allow reduction of hours or furloughing. So a furloughing would be reducing the 8-hour work day or the work week. We do operate on a no work, no pay. However, it's very the Department of Labor and Employment has prevented employers from dismissing employees for COVID related reasons, and also provided some help to employees by preventing the non-diminution of benefits during the pandemic, at least for the first 6 months. There are a lot of workplace protocols that have been put in by the IATF, so businesses operating need to know those in terms of social distancing, wearing masks, workplace protocols, and one of the issues related to that is employer liability. If you do not comply with the requirements of the Department of Health and the IATF regulations, you may be held liable in case your employees contract the virus or have make a claim against the company. So that's one thing that's been added to the list of compliance requirements for businesses in the Philippines. One other thing that has definitely changed Philippine businesses is in contractual arrangements for leases, sales contracts, and service contracts, and contracts for services. One of the major issues is force majeure and the caso fortuito. So these are force majeure clauses are those which are supposed to absolve people who are in a contract from complying with their obligations. So in terms of leases, because of COVID-19, we had, let's say there's a lockdown, or the employees are not allowed to go physically be present in the office, and so they're not allowed operations. Our lessees not required to pay rent anymore. That's been an issue that's been a very discussed about issue. And I think the answer is that these lockdowns or quarantine situations don't fall under force majeure unless specifically stated. Sorry, is there a question? So they don't fall under force majeure and don't absolve the contracting parties from their obligation, unless you specifically mention that COVID-19, a COVID-19 closure would absolve you from paying rent. So unlucky for lessors and lessees both, it's now a constant battleground. Same goes for sales contracts, cancellation of contracts. I would also argue it depends on the wording of the contracts. And so that leaves businesses, apart from all these regulations, apart from dealing with liquidity concerns, apart from dealing with cash flow and lower revenue, with a lot of legal issues on paying their rent, paying their employees, providing benefits, whether or not they can cancel contracts, whether or not they can cancel services due to the pandemic. So it's definitely put this pandemic has definitely made me put my thinking hat on for a lot of the clients, because you have to think your way out of these problems. But I think what I'm learning through my clients and through the businesses that I've encountered is that we are becoming more innovative as a result of this, and identifying problems that were existing beforehand. In the same way that COVID has exposed our vulnerabilities, now we can improve on that situation, and now we can address problems that were underlying before, and hopefully work towards a better future where we don't have to, where we can deal with the pandemic, where we can deal with these problems, and we're understanding more that businesses are connected, and we are more connected than we think we are, despite quarantine and despite isolation. So I'm going to conclude my presentation there, and just let you know what our services are. Company formation, corporate compliance, product registration, tax incentives, immigration, recruitment, HR consulting and payroll, and COVID-related compliance. So again, I want to thank the SCCCI and all the speakers, and I want to thank you for your time and your ears today. And I give the microphone back to Tiffany.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much. And, thanks for dialing in all the way from US to give this presentation to us. I hope the participants, have much more ideas about how the business regulations to go about in the Philippines. And do bear in mind, if you have any questions for Amanda or Dr. Aldaba, please key in your questions in the Q&A icon below, so that we'll address your questions later on during the panel discussion. We'd like to invite our last two speakers for today. We have Mr. Mervyn To, CEO of OP Solutions, and Ms. Eileen Arango, COO of OP Solutions. Now, OP Solutions is an IT solutions and support many companies, across the Southeast Asia, in Asia itself. Now, they'll be talking about the key challenges faced as an SME company when they venture into the Philippines market, as well as the ups and downs that the company experienced in the process. So passing over to you, Mervyn and Eileen.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Kwa. Thank you, SCCCI, for the opportunities. Thank you, Mr. Kwa, Tiffany, as well as the sharing session from Dr. Aldaba and Amanda. So I'm Mervyn To here. I'm glad to be here to share the experience. So let me share my screen first. Okay, so I would like to introduce also my partner, Yen, to co-run these presentations, and I'll explain why. I'll probably change to a different gear, and instead of sharing the very factual things, I will try to probably tell a story. I will tell a stories of how Ops Solutions evolve, and of course how we landed in Philippines. So these are the agendas I'm going to share today. I'll share a bit of how Ops comes along, and what is our problem statements. Why do we go to Philippines? And of course, we will share a bit of statistics on Philippines and a bit of my thoughts about Philippines in terms of doing business there. And I would also like to share why we choose Philippines. There are many countries that we can go to, but we choose Philippines. And also how we took our first steps there and get it started up. And we also share about some things that we done in the corporate responsibilities and how we evolve since we are already there 5 years, and what we are looking forward into the futures. So let me share a bit of what Ops Solution is to give you a bit of context. So Ops Solutions was started in 2008, 12 years ago. And that time it was just do it myself. I'm the sole business owner. I'm the only one doing it. That point of time, I'm selling hardwares. So hardware like BlackBerry batteries and other accessories, and the business grows from maybe 50,000. We grows to become 100,000. That is where we start providing IT resource to help companies with their IT supports, and that business also grow and evolve. And of course, the turning points comes when one day where I have the opportunities to take over IT projects, and I bought over the IT projects for about 150,000 USD. And during these projects, this is where I get to know Yan. Yan was a developer at that point of time, and through that, Yan has been with me for about 6 years now. So she from a developers, project managers, program managers, managers for the office, and my COO, and now becoming big partners. So, and this is where in 2015, we start venturing to Philippines with Yan. So why do we go to the Philippines? So I think the initial reason for us was quite easy. We didn't initially going out to Philippines because we want to sell something there. We have a bigger problem statements when I took over the software projects, because at that point of time we are outsourcing our developments to the Vietnam team, and of course Vietnam developers, they are great. They're very bunch of hardworking peoples. And if you want them to work many long hours over weekends, they're willing to do that. But one challenge will be the communications, because to do so, you need to have a very strong project managers who is be able to communicate in Vietnamese and as well as speak English to the team. So this is where we have challenges during our projects. Of course, to help the projects, we have made frequent visits to Vietnam team, to Vietnam to communicate with the team. Of course, internally, I also feel that it is important that when we do developments, we have the internal knowledge. So I have this philosophy of 80-20. 80% will be doing software development in-house and 20% will be outsourced. So the 20% will be, in future, for example, there's a need to ramp it up to 120%, 150%. This is where I can count on my Vietnamese partners to deliver that. But I also look into it, doing development in Singapore, it's very costly. The cost of developers, initial starting pay now, I think is about ranging from, I would say, 2,500 to 4,000 fresh grad, depending on their capabilities, and up to 5,000-6,000 for very mid-tiers developers. So with that, then we can only limit a small team of developers. So this is where we would like to say, okay, how can we expand it? And of course, we also want to say, how can we be different from a cost perspective? That's where we need to see, we are exploring Philippines, and this is where we go to. So sharing a bit of the information on it, the Philippines has been growing tremendously when I starting it. I think the currency exchange rate was about $1 is to 39, and I think now is about $1 is to the $37 peso. So you can see that the economy of Philippines is growing, and I think the middle class has been growing throughout the years, and you can see that there are more and more well-to-do peoples. And that is where we see that this is opportunities for us to expand. Instead of getting software development there, we also like to start selling our solutions there. So some numbers, I want to drill into it, but predominantly a lot of motor services and tradings. And for our solutions, we are very strong in food and services software development, helping our clients Unilever. So I just want to go back to the why we choose Philippines. I think the reason why we choose Philippines was it has a very lower cost of expenses where we get. So for just to share with you, I have a team of 100 over developers there. Of course, my burn rate on average is about 100 over 1,000. So it just give you a context. So it's about 1,000-ish for Sing dollars for each developers. But this is only not including other costs. So that is for that. The IT industries in Philippines is booming. There is a lot of challenges. So it helps us when we're doing recruitments in Philippines. There's a lot of good universities there. IT is one of the important courses there. And there is a good command of English. And the team, and as well as there's a lot of global companies that we are in US now, especially now, we have couple of these companies as our client. So how do we settle in Philippines? So I think with this, I want to bring in Ian to it. But this is interesting stories that we shared. On the first day, we didn't have any so-called this webinar like today that we understand it. It's just for me and Ian, we travel into Philippines and just trying to find what are the best place in it. We went to Makati and we tried to find a place. It's like a small one room. I think one room, it costs about 2,000 Sing and it's very expensive. That's why we moved to the suburb. And for the same price, we are able to get 3 times, 4 times of it. And of course, we will need, for me, I will need to travel very frequently to Philippines. Probably for me, is about almost 1 quarter. And Ian will be traveling on a monthly basis. And we start talking to the people there and understanding, of course, Ian has taught me about the culture. I think Filipinos value relationship very much. And if you're able to work on that, they are emotionally driven. They work very hard for you. In one of our family events, during the family event, so we allow them to bring their families into the events. One of the developers bring their grandmothers, and the grandmothers have to travel about 6 hours from their northern side of it, near Clarke Quay there, down to our office just to attend these events. And she is very pleased that how her grandson has grown throughout this company. And this is where we give them them a very positive environments that they are willing to work hard. Maybe I'll pass this to Yen.
Thank you so much, Mervin, for sharing about the Philippines, and a very wonderful afternoon to everyone. So once again, I'm Ilian Arango. I work with Mervin as a partner for OP Solutions. So it is indeed a pleasure to share with you how did we settle or start our organization in the Philippines. As what Mervin has shared, we travel there very frequently. And as we all know that we Filipinos value relationship very, very much. So it is very good to meet with people there face to face. So this is where we actually talk to different lawyers, accountants, and advisors on how are we going to set up our entity in the Philippines. And me as a Filipino helped Mervin to understand the people and the culture there. So as what we have really shared earlier, that Filipinos value relationships and are emotionally driven. We actually feel rewarded when we build relationships, good relationships with our colleagues, our bosses, and our clients. So we give our best in a positive environment that encourages a family community. And with Mervin, he was able to help me understand Philippines' economic and business scenes. I think this is where Mervin has a very good and very strong business background, and me as I have an information technology background. And this is where we complement each other as partners. So as what he has shared earlier, we scouted for an office initially in Manila. So we actually checked office spaces in Makati and BGC. As we all know, those are the popular cities in the Philippines. But Philippines can be quite expensive too. So this is where Mervin asked me, where is my hometown? And I'm from Santa Rosa, Laguna, which is about 40 minutes to an hour drive from Manila without traffic. And if it's with traffic, probably about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So this city is near Taal volcano, which erupted early this year, as we all know. Yeah, so we started our office in the likes of a story of Facebook, where they started in a garage while we OP Solutions started in a residential area. So we started with a small office that can accommodate 10 persons. And then a year after, we actually have to rent another office because our team actually doubled and even tripled. So on our third year, we decided to get our own office space and build a wonderful environment for our employees. So I guess this is where we actually step to a different level, because we have a good working environment for our people. So our people are more engaged. We have a culture of innovation there, and we can also invite our clients to meet from our offices. So we have spaces for lounge, for meeting areas, and for pantry. So this creates a positive outlook for our team members. And now, as what Mervin has shared, we have over 100 employees in the Philippines, and we are consistently growing because of the demands of our projects from Singapore and regionally. And surprisingly, our employees are not just from the areas nearby. We even have employees from Manila and from the northern area of Luzon. They actually move to our city because I guess this is where we Filipinos are committed. So we're not just hard workers, but we are also committed to what we do. Next, please. So in the very beginning, this is where we actually look forward to our mission to be able to give back to the society. So Mervin and I are into giving back to the society. So since we started our operations in the Philippines, we visit orphanage and public schools to do immersion sessions with the less fortunate children. So we do provide them with necessities, we do donate school supplies, and conduct feeding programs and activities such as arts and crafts, dancing and singing, as we all know that Filipinos are very good in singing and dancing. And aside from that, we also do invite the family members of our employees in an event where we host in our office or different venues where we gather together, do networking, get to know the family members of our employees, and they get to know who they work with and who are the bosses and who are the management team. So this is where we actually share about our vision and mission to the family members, our achievements, and what we do look forward in the future as an organization. So this doesn't just provide a good support system in the organization, but also for the family members of our employees. Next, please, Marvin. So as we have grown as OP Solutions over the 12 years of our existence here, we are now an end-to-end IT solution. So we cover hardware, software, and infrastructure services. We focus mainly on digital transformation, where we do software development for websites, mobile applications, managed services for our clients, such as cloud infrastructure, networking, IT office setup. And then for hardware, next, please. We are a partner of Apple. So we are an authorized Apple reseller in the Philippines and is part of the Apple Consultant Network. And we also work with different technology partners such as OpenText, Couchbase, Splunk, and Amazon. So we don't just limit ourselves to be a provider of IT, but we also work with different IT providers in the Philippines and in the region to be able to support each other. Next, please. So moving forward, we have developed different products with our technology partners. So we have developed RealQR, which is OCR, or the one that we work with OpenText as a product authentication solution. We also do resell software licenses such as Workbook for total agency management system, and different applications with other technology partners. So I just want to share with you that recently we have explored a 16 hours development cycle where we started the development in the Philippines for 8 hours. And we work with our Europe partner from Netherlands and Turkey. So between 3 to 4 p.m., we will do a stand-up meeting with the team members from Turkey and Netherlands to catch up, get the progress, and understand the challenges that each team members are facing. And then it will be passed over to Turkey and Netherlands. And afterwards, Philippines will take over again. So this is where we envision to be able to do a 24 hours development life cycle in the future, where we can also cover America region. And as the technology advances, as our organization progresses, we do make sure that we develop our team members as well, our employees. So we provide different trainings and self-development programs for them. We do explore DevOps, design thinking, and now we wanted to provide everything as a service to our customers. Next, please. So with our strong presence here in Singapore, we have worked with different FMCG companies, and we have already gained different customers in the Philippines over the 5 years that we have existed there. So we have worked with Unilever, Jardine, Amazon, and the different brands in terms of digital transformation. And of course, this is to recognize we are here. We have been successful over the 5 years in the Philippines, not just because of the support of our Singapore company or Singapore organization, but also with our amazing team in the Philippines. We have a very, very good management core team in the Philippines who looks over the operations in the Philippines. So it just doesn't have to actually look over whether they are doing their job, but also make sure that everyone is being well taken care of. So we have a group of team members with program managers, project managers, business analysts, designers, developers, web developers, mobile developers, good QA team, and technical support team. And of course, without Mervin's trust and positive outlook with the Philippines, I guess we wouldn't be here. So I guess that's all that I can share with you about how we actually our journey in the Philippines.
So yes, I think what Yen shared is it. I think it is a very amazing journey. I think when I started out Ops Solutions and when I started Ops Philippines, I didn't think that we will grow to these skills, and things just happens, and we are just moving the wave. I think as what Yen has said, I should say that having a great partner like Yen does makes things a lot more easier, and I think she managed to instill a right culture within the companies, and I think this is something that we are looking forward to see what can the next 5 years of Ops Solutions can be like. With this, thank you for your attentions. Back to you, Tiffany.
Hello, I
Tiffany,
think I would
there?
like to answer 2 questions from EM. So first question is that how easy it is to source for digital or IT related manpower in the Philippines, since ICT sector is booming. As what we've shared earlier, is really, really easy to source out developers or IT related manpower in the Philippines. One is that language is English, so it's very easy to work with HR or different companies there to start your entity and be able to get applicants. So I understand that Philippines right now has 40% unemployment rate because of COVID, and I think it's a good chance for you to start your entity in the Philippines and start hiring people there. And then another question from EM is also, what is the average pay scale in the Philippines for fresh grads versus middle management? And any underlying employer obligations or remuneration that company has to cover, example, CPF in Singapore. So average pay scale actually starts from 450 USD for junior level or associate level. Probably middle management will tend to grow to 700 to 1,000, which is really cheaper as compared to the rates here in Singapore. That's why we were able to get a bigger team in the Philippines. We have over 100 people there as compared to our team here in Singapore. And for the obligations for the company, we do have social service, PhilHealth, social security services, and Pag-ibig, which is relative to the CPF. So it's also 50-50. So 50% is borne by the employee and then 50% by the employer.
Just to add on, the 13-month bonus is compulsory. So you need to factor into your salary calculations. Any
Okay.
other questions?
Okay.
Back
Thank
to
you,
you,
Mervyn.
Tiffany.
Thank you, Lillian. So sorry that I had some connections issue previously that's happening on our end here, down here. But Mervyn and Lillian, just stay put down here while I invite the rest of the speaker in to do the Q&A panel questions, because I believe that many of our participants has already been keying in some of the questions in. So, I urge the participants who are online now, we are proceeding on to the Q&A sessions. So please feel free, to key in your questions that you have for the panels of speakers that you have, especially this timing. We have from Mervyn, who is he's a Singaporean and he's down there doing all the business. You can ask him anything about what's the difference about the cultures, being Singapore, doing business in Singapore versus in Philippines. And of course, we have Dr. Aldaba, who's representing DTI from the government sector at that side. And we have Amanda, who will be, coming in can talk to you about the legals and business regulations in Philippines now. Now, okay, we have of course come to the Q&A session, but before we begin, for those who would like to receive the presentation deck, please take some time to scan on the QR code on the screen right now to fill out a short survey. After you have completed the form, the presentation deck will be sent to you in a few days' time after editing is done. Now, let us welcome back our 4 speakers. Can we have the 4 speakers to on back your mic and video? And if you have any queries, as usual, please feel free to type your questions in the Q&A box. Due to the time constraints, we may not be able to answer all questions, but do note that if in a situation that we are not able to answer your questions, we will send a list of questions to the speakers for them to email you directly. Plus, we also see your kind understanding that should there be any technical issues, like just now what has happened, please bear do give us a bit of time to adjust accordingly. Now, let us have the 4 speakers right back in. And while the participants, key your questions inside. Understand that 2 of the questions has been already answered by Mervyn and Lian on it. So I do see the first question is by Dell. Understand that Dr. Aldaba, Amanda has said so much initiatives like, initiatives that, foreign companies can work with. But, Dell just have a quick questions to ask is that for those companies who are interested to collaborate with these initiatives, where can they get more details on this program itself? Yep. So maybe can I have Amanda and Dr. Aldaba to advise, like, where can they get more information as, being a Singapore company, if they are now based in Singapore and they can't really go abroad, is there any website or, place that they can look for or connect to or, talk to you guys after the event for more details? So maybe over to you guys, please.
Yeah, I'll let me just share with you my response to the question. As you have seen in the presentation, there are a number of programs, and these are being implemented not only by our department, but as well as other government agencies. So I would suggest if you could perhaps check our website, which also lists down all these different government programs being implemented, especially those that are COVID related. If you go to dti.gov.ph on the landing page, you would easily find all the COVID related programs and projects. But if you have more specific questions and if you want me to help you, of course, you are more than welcome to send me an email. I'll just type in my email later in the chat. Okay. Do I answer all the other questions, or do I let Amanda answer the same question as well?
We will proceed on with the question one by one. Amanda, I think you have something to add on down there.
Yes, I was just going to say the government websites usually are the best source for information on the initiatives and the programs, but please feel free to contact me at, I think my email address will be given. You can contact me directly or email info@kittlesoncarpo.com. That's the branch of Incorp in the Philippines, and we'd be happy to answer any investment related questions or doing business related questions for the particular program that you're interested in.
Okay, just for all the participants' information, after the event, Singapore Chinese Chamber will be actually sending off a thank you email, and we will have the contact details for, to INCOP, to DTI, and to OP Solutions. So if any of you have particular questions pertaining your industry, because different industry may have different incentives, then you guys can email, to the respective speakers directly, and they will be able to assist you up on it. So I hope, Amanda and Dr. Albada has answered Del. Del will take it offline for further of your, to see what are the initiatives that Philippines side can be able to help you. Now, I have another participant, Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel has, I think he's a Singapore SME company who been to Philippines, been there, done that, and he has faced some issues along the way. So his question is that, are there any tax incentives or any other schemes to help companies keep their operations going, in Philippines? Because some context about his background is that he has actually set up a business in Quezon City during 2019. Now, 2 months after ECQ, April, May, ECQ, I think is equivalent to Singapore circuit breaker, okay? He has to close his store, because unfortunately he's not able to proceed on. Now, he's thinking of, is it viable for him to return back to Quezon City or in Philippines after the pandemic and rebuild, knowing that what the government support is available will factor into his decision making. So maybe can I have the speakers to, say, to comment about his situation and what are maybe some of the incentives to incentivize him to go back to the Philippine market and to reset up his business again?
Yeah, definitely. I would suggest that he comes back. And in terms of what's in store for him, in terms of government support, we are here to provide you with tax incentives, probably income tax holiday, but of course you need to register. And I also need to find out a little bit more information with respect to the type of business or the type of activity you are engaged in, because some of the incentives would really depend on the kind of activity that you are doing. But if this is in retail, I'm just trying to hypothesize based on the given information. If it is on retail, and if it is a micro or a small, medium enterprises, definitely you can get loans. I've presented earlier the Bayanihan tool, and so has Amanda. There are a lot of programs there that would be providing loans to those that have been affected by the COVID. Especially there's the Land Bank of the Philippines for the relatively larger enterprises. There's also the Development Bank of the Philippines. And then there is also the Small Business Corporation. This is the finance, it's an attached agency of the Department of Trade and Industry. So if you belong to the small or the micro category, regardless of what sector you're operating in, then you may want to take a look at the loans that are being offered by the Small Business Corporation. They run into hundreds of thousands of pesos, and I think, yeah, it would really depend on the size of the company and then the amount that you would be needing. And then there are other support for the workers, especially those that were dismissed. And I don't know whether upon dismissal, the workers were able to get in touch with the Department of Labor and Employment, where they could also get some financial support. And of course, there are also incentives that are being given to companies who did not stop their operation and who were able to keep their workers. So if you could provide me with more additional information, then I can probably direct you to the more specific programs. So I just type my email here so you can get in touch with me in case you have additional specific questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Aldaba. I hope Gabriel, Dr. Aldaba has managed to give you, some assurance and, even giving you her contact to contact her directly if you have any other inquiries pertaining, the incentives going on and how to go about, moving back to having your business set up back in Philippines down there. Okay, and since we are on, the incentive moving forward kind of support, okay, I do have Gary with me. Now he's more specific on the industry and sector. His question is also to Dr. Aldaba because he said that you have shared many areas of support and partnerships Philippines is looking at. I would like to inquire more on one of your slides in the IT sector. What kind of support you may be looking at, in general, like, IT support, maybe indirect or direct infrastructures, hardware, or what kind of, supports or partnerships that maybe the country is looking for? And maybe Amanda, you also can, bring some of your valuable experience to share with Gary.
Well, we are incentivizing both the hardware part, the software part of IT, and whether if you will be selling solely to the domestic market, there are also incentives awaiting for you through the Board of Investments investment priorities plan. I also have a slide on the different incentives that are being provided. And if you're an exporter, then you can register either under the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. If you want to locate in any PEZA economic zone, there are a lot of them, but there are also options to register under Clark if you want to go outside of the metropolitan Manila area. Then there's also, it's within Luzon, about 2 hours maybe, because there are highways, new roads that have been constructed connecting the zones with Metro Manila. So there's another one in Subic where also I think there's an IT hub out there also that's emerging. And in those 2 zones, Clark and Subic, you can, there's no income tax holiday, but what you can avail of is the special 5% tax on your gross income, along with other incentives such as duty and tax-free importation of capital equipment and your raw materials. And if you're locating in PEZA, but there's also a PEZA zone in Clark, in Pampanga. So if you want to move out of Metro Manila, and there you would also be able to avail of income tax holiday up to a maximum of 8 years. Then there's also, after your income tax holiday, you won't pay the regular corporate income tax of 30%, but you will be entitled to a 5% corporate income tax, and plus the other incentives on tax and duty-free importation of capital equipment and raw materials. But right now also we are, since there are so many differences across the different ITAs in terms of the incentives that are being provided, right now the deliberations are ongoing in terms of changing and modernizing our incentive system so as to make it more uniform across the different sectors, make it more transparent, provide, well, I think I've discussed this during my presentation. So a menu of incentives would be given. So I just briefly described, there's income tax holiday, there's the special corporate income tax rate. This is below, I think, around 10%. And the regular corporate income tax is also going to be reduced from the current 30 to 25%. And then it will go down to 20% by 2027. And the last is through the enhanced incentive scheme. So we have a long list of various expenses that you can deduct. But for that particular option, you will have to use, or you have to apply, the regular corporate income tax. So in case you want additional information, you can actually log on to or visit the sites of PEZA, that's Philippine Economic Zone Authority, the Board of Investments, the Clark Development Corporation, or the Subic Bay Development Authority, and they have all the incentives outlined in their websites. And if the plan is to devote your business solely to the domestic market, you may go to the website of the Board of Investments.
Okay.
Yeah, but as soon as we're able to pass the new law, there's only going to be one comprehensive taxation and incentive system.
Thank you, Dr. Adava. Thanks for so much for the information. Gary, just for your information and for the rest of the participants' information, if you would like to have the presentation deck that was presented by Dr. Adava, okay, you may scan on the QR code. But I understand that some of the participants may be using your mobile phone, so you may face a bit of difficulties of scanning the QR code to fill the survey form. But rest assured that after you have exited out from the Zoom event later on, you'll be redirected to click on to do a feedback form for this event. Once you have done the feedback form, just let us know that you'd like to receive the presentation deck, and after a few working days, we'll be able to send you the relevant presentation deck with all the contact details of the relevant speakers itself. Okay, so Amanda, moving on your that side, do you have anything more to add on with what Dr. Aldaba has to say? Or on the supports or areas that you think that hey, Singapore firms, you should come to Singapore, to Philippines itself to invest in it, because you guys are very strong moving forwards with the IT sector area.
Yeah, so I think that Dr. Aldaba's description was pretty comprehensive. Just in general, the incentives of the government are related to either export-related businesses or the type of business that they're engaged in, or the location of the business. So the export-related businesses are obviously if you are doing business in the Philippines and your clients are foreign and you're being paid in foreign currency for services or goods, then there's normally what you'd be entitled to is an income tax holiday and the duty-free importation of capital equipment, or a special tax regime. And then in terms also of the businesses, it would depend on what's on the investment priorities plan for the government for that particular year and whatever might be inserted in there. But normally it's the nature of the business that's involved. So it's important to advise properly. We need to know the nature of the business, the type of activity, and whether or not normally the businesses that are incentivized have to do with introducing new technology in the Philippines or supporting businesses that the government has named as important, like whether that's green energy or small scale fishing, etc., or something like that. That's on the investment priorities plan for the year, and that's published. I think the last publication was in 2018 for that. So that's all I have to add. You can also go to our website. We have the Kittles and Carpo website also has a discussion of the incentives that are available. And obviously from there, I always suggest to go to the government website because they always have updates on what the latest is.
Sure. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you so much for the information. I hope, Gary, we have answered your questions on it. Okay, and next up, Amanda, since we are on the line, okay, I believe the next question from Daniel. Daniel, question is definitely directed to you. Now, his question is that one of his business is in digital marketing services such as online advertising. Now, I remember you have shown a chart on how much foreign equities is for advertising and stuff. And he also has another business is in the innovative technology-driven company and a provider of cloud-based software as a service SaaS solutions. Now, can setting up a company wholly foreign-owned enterprise in the Philippines, like can they set up a wholly foreign-owned enterprise in the Philippines itself? So maybe Amanda, can I have you to address on it?
Sure. So advertising is one of the businesses that is on the negative list. And if they register if they register with the SEC and they put that in their incorporation in their primary purpose, definitely that's going to be not allowed by SEC, or they're only going to be allowed to have 30% equity. So I think it's a matter of also, SEC is still also trying to understand some of these digital marketing services and software as a service. So I think it's a matter of how the services are being performed and who the client base is. If it's all online, but the clients are in the Philippines, typically I've seen some SEC opinions where the SEC has taken a very strict position on that. So, you know, I guess the other question is whether it's necessary for them to open an entity in the Philippines that will do that versus they set up support services in the Philippines. Is it a if they have support services in the Philippines, then you don't need to register as an advertising company in the Philippines. However, if you're going to be doing business in the Philippines and dipping into the Philippine market, how extensive that is will also have an impact on how the SEC will view the company. So it's sort of a it depends answer.
Okay, definitely. I understand that, you know, many of the participants' questions, you know, probably we can be more specific, but do understand that, you know, because this is a ongoing webinar sessions, you know, maybe some of the speakers need further details in order to give you proper advice. You know, so the current advice they can give you is probably more generic, but, you know, if more emails is coming in and more details that they have, they'll be able to give you more specific and direct questions. So Daniel, I hope that, you know, Amanda is able to answer in general on your enquiries, but not to worry. Amanda will have your contact details and she can send you an email, or you can send an email to Amanda, you know, to explain more about your directions and what you want, you know, in terms of investing into the Philippine markets. Now, Amanda, I know, you know, there's one more question by Tina. Okay, you are the business regulations expert. So her question is, for rep office paid up of 30K, they need a local partner holding. How much is the percentage? Now, I know that they didn't really say specific, you know, specify which company sectors that they are in. So maybe can you give them a general, you know, what's the local partners holding of the equities that they need to look at? Yeah. So off to you.
Any branch, a representative office is a branch. All branches are basically fully foreign owned, and there's no mix of equity. It's either all Filipino or all foreign. So a representative office, you'd need to appoint a resident agent that does not need to necessarily have equity in the company. However, there is only that $30,000 a year to fund the office. It's not a fee or anything like that. It's just that the office needs to be capitalized with that $30,000. And a representative office is a non-revenue generating entity that you know, will not issue any receipts. Doesn't pay tax, doesn't do business. Technically, it's a support or marketing in the Philippines, and not a revenue generating, not generating revenue in the Philippines. Bye.
Okay, Kensha. Thanks, Amanda. Tina, I hope Amanda has really answered your questions. Okay, due to the time limit, I'm going to, you know, post up the last two questions. And, you know, for one of the last two questions that I see, I'll be answering Edwin questions. Edwin is talking about e-commerce market in Philippines. Now, I know that, you know, doing so many of the different ASEAN countries, e-commerce and digital, you know, market space, industry space is a booming market cutting through across all ASEAN market itself. So maybe can I have the speakers to maybe you know, comment a thing or two about the e-marketplaces in Philippines? Who are they? What are the common e-marketplaces that you guys are using? How big, and is it a growing industry? And, you know, how's the user using this e-commerce marketplace? And what do you guys see in the future, next coming few years on this industry itself? Yep. So maybe can I have, yes, Amanda?
Hi, yeah. So the e-commerce market in the Philippines definitely booming because of COVID. You know, if anything, COVID has forced us to digitize. So everything, you order everything online, probably Shopee, Lazada, these businesses, or platform type businesses where You know, you're ordering online through Food Panda or Grab. Those businesses are doing are definitely consumers are starting to really use those services now more than they ever would. They're trying out new things. There's a lot of informal e-commerce in the Philippines. You know, through Instagram and Facebook, selling individually. The problem is logistics. So I think even if we were operating at full speed without the pandemic, one of the major problems is logistics enterprises in the Philippines and getting the delivery done, which is you know, what Amazon, for example, is so successful in the US. Has done, and sort of like the more robust platforms here in the US. So it's there, but the infrastructure of e-commerce is not quite what it should be yet.
Okay, so maybe there's an opportunity. Yes, Dr. Aldaba, yes, you'd like to add on?
I agree, of course, that infrastructure is crucial in order for us to really fully develop and become successful in the e-commerce business. And we know that this is really going to be the direction. And even prior to the COVID, we were actually already promoting this industry. And in fact, our own department, we have organized a store. It's a physical store in selected malls all over the country. But what we did was, given that it has generated a lot of interest and of course not too many, since they're only present, this Go Local stores, local with a K instead of a C. So we call them Go Local stores, and they have all the nice products, those top of the line products coming from the different regions all over the country. And so these are showcased in these Go Local stores. And so what we did in order for buyers to have greater access, we partnered with Shopee. So now there is what we call Shop Pinas. It's the platform is being provided by Shopee. And if you go to that website, Shop Pinas, you will see all the different products being sold by Go Local stores, which are being supported by the Department of Trade and Industry. And like what I've said, it's one of our top priorities. And at the same time, of course, we're also incentivizing, we're trying to attract more investments. And government, of course, our counterparts at the Department of Information Communication Technology, as well as from the Department of Transportation, they all have programs, ongoing plans in order to improve in our infrastructure. And it's also important to note that even under the Bayanihan 2, our recovery program, economic recovery program, e-commerce was specifically indicated to provide all the support in order for us to really grow and develop this industry. And as we speak, there is also a bill that has been filed both at the Senate and at the House on Internet Transactions Act. That's the name of the law or the bill that is going to it's going to provide the legislative and the regulatory framework in order to support the development of this industry.
Okay, Kensha, thank you, Dr. Aldaba. I hope the participants have more idea, that Philippines, e-commerce, IT, digital is definitely a boom and it's growing, and definitely there will always be opportunities from down there, even from the infrastructure to the software and everything. Now, we have come to the end of the Q&A session, but before we go, I do have one last question for all of the speakers, to let the participants know that if there's one reason why you feel business should invest in the Philippines, what would that be? So maybe for the first person I would like to have is Dr. Audaba. You know, what is one reason you feel that Singapore businesses should invest in Philippines, you know, moving forward?
We complement the economy of Singapore. Singapore does not have too many people, and I think whenever Singapore would need engineers, would need IT specialists, managers, Singapore would always go to the Philippines. And that's good, of course, bringing the workers, bringing the Filipinos to Singapore. But I think given the good performance of the Philippines, given the prospects, future prospects for growth here in the country, we have a growing market, growing middle class, and more than 100 million Filipinos. I mean, that's a very huge market which you can use as base. And at the same time, for connections to global value chains in various industries, we want Singapore to locate its hub here in the Philippines. We have very good workers. Our human resources really, I think, are our main source of strength, our main source of comparative advantage and competitiveness. And I hope Singapore would take advantage of that. And at the same time, Philippines is moving. Philippines is focusing its efforts towards developing its manufacturing industry, linking manufacturing with both agriculture as well as with services. Again, IT is a strong industry here in the country, and hence there is a lot of opportunity for Singaporean companies to really become successful here in the country, and it's a win-win situation, I would say.
Yeah, I believe many of the Singaporean films, some of them like Charles and Keith, Paradise, you know, Dynasty are really all in the Philippine markets too. So, you know, Amanda, do you have any, you know, one thing that you'd like to let the participants know, you know, why you should invest in Philippines? And I believe you've been working some of the Singapore firms who are in, and maybe you can share a bit, you know, what is the sweetness after they have ventured into the Philippines?
So if I had one answer, it would be the underlying demographics of the Philippines. I think, you know, we're developed, that's the population, that's the potential market, that's the labor force, English speaking, everything. All those are at the core of like a strong basic investment. It's not something that will change. The population, by sheer amount of population, in fact. So the underlying demographics of the Philippines and the underlying demographics of the region in general, Southeast Asia. So our own consulting company and InCorp, we're always working on sort of like a Southeast Asian play. In terms of, because this is the region to be in. This is a region of growth and stability. Singapore is probably the leader in Southeast Asia in terms of that. But because we're a developing country, that's where the opportunity lies. So in a fully developed economy, there's very little room for investment growth. But in a developing economy, if you put your money in an economy that's going to grow 6.5%, that's as if you put it in a bank and it's going to grow 6.5%. I mean, hopefully we'll get back to that. We run a 20 years, and it's still, there's always more. There's always more to gain. So of course it's not risk-free. So you do need to be properly advised. You do need to look into the details. It's easy to succeed, but it's just as easy to fail. So definitely for those with the proper risk appetite, now is the time to start looking at new investments. Now is the time to start looking at opportunities. Now is the time to strike when the iron's hot. It's never good when everybody's getting into it. I mean, then you have to find your opportunities when no one is looking, and that's how you make money. So again, there's danger, but there's opportunity.
Yes, definitely like what you say. 危机就是商机 in Chinese. Yes, so when there's danger, yes, you have to look into the opportunities to it. Okay, now I will pass off Mervin. I'll leave you for the last to summarize everything. Especially on the culture of the Singapore versus Philippines, how you feel everything. I'll pass over to Lian first. Lian, what have you got to say? For this businesses in Singapore, to invest in Philippines there.
Yep, so I totally agree with Dr. Aldaba and Attorney Amanda that the labor force in the Philippines is really strong, and we are a developing country right now. So it is really a good opportunity to invest in the Philippines because there's a lot of room for improvements, but there's the people in the Philippines are committed to growth, very aggressive in terms of learning new technologies and learning new industries as well. And I guess the labor force in the Philippines is everywhere. So it's not just expanding, Filipinos are everywhere. It's not just expanding into Philippines reach, but also we, the Filipinos, help the different countries to expand towards the other countries as well.
Okay, Kenshin. Thanks, Lian. Now we've come to Mervin, okay, for the last speaker down there. Mervin, now, since you are the last speaker, can you give the best, reasoning, why you've been to Philippines? Because I know as a boss, you just go ahead with Philippines, and what, kind of goodness you have get at the end of the day that you think that, hey, my fellow Singaporeans, you should invest and do your business in Philippines is a place to go to.
So I think thinking back 5-6 years on making that plunge into Philippines with Ian, thinking back, I think I have totally no regrets. In fact, that's the reason why I've grown from initial 2 employees to 100 now. And I do see that the number of employees will continue to grow. Not just because digital is the in thing now, but because I think it is really easy to work with the Philippine teams. If you are able to so-called capture, 抓住他们的心 or capture their heart, they will work very hard for you. And that is, Yen is a testament to me. She has been with me for 6 years, and she's been helping me a lot of things. And so far, all the team members reporting to her has been very committed. We built a good family, in fact, that we know each other and we're working hard for each other. That's one thing. I think to Singapore brand business owners, I think I would like to break this down into 2 parts. One is really, are you selling to Philippines or are you outsourcing your work? I think outsourcing to Philippines is easy. I think as I mentioned, there's a good pool of people there at a probably a more competitive rates compared to Singapore. And I think English speaking is a very important aspect. So I think this is easy to it. If you're selling to Philippines, one of the common things when I travel to the Philippines is the Singapore brand. I'm quite surprised that actually Singapore brand is highly recognized in Philippines. People say that, oh, you are from Singapore company. Oh yes, okay, let's talk. I would like to work with you. So I think Singaporeans do not underestimate the Singapore brand. The Singapore brand recognize qualities, good honor and integrities. So I would like us to say, let's leverage on that and keep it to that. And for Philippines, I think compared to other countries that I have business with, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, and Japanese, they are highly homogeneous. So meaning to say that if you don't speak the local language, it'll be quite challenging for you to penetrate. And so having, they are very easy, very friendly. They speak English, so you can easily mix with them. So last but not least, I think don't just hear from the teams here. I think it'll be important after the COVID has over, plan the trips down. I think SCCCI do plan a regular Philippine mission trips and make use of that. Go there, enjoy, go to BGC. You can see the development there is truly amazing. The shopping there is fantastic. The food is marvelous. So I'm looking forward to that. With that, back to you.
Thanks, Melvin. I have to say yes. Philippines has a very friendly culture. I've been there myself, and from there I've also have many friends knowing, like Amanda, Dr. Aldaba, and Yen. They're all very friendly. So do head down to Philippines. You'll be amazed. I've been there myself, and shopping is definitely amazing, and they have very good beaches and food also in Philippines there. Now we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for participating, and a big thank you to Dr. Aldaba, Amanda, Mervin, and Yen for their time and valuable sharing today. We hope that you have benefited a lot for the webinar session. Also, please let us know your comments on the webinar through the feedback survey. After you have exit from the Zoom, do the feedback form survey so that you'll be able to receive the presentation deck. And last but not least, we also like to share that there will be another exciting season lined up for you tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. So please join us for the Vietnam Market edition of Thriving in the Next Future of ASEAN. Now stay safe and healthy, and see you tomorrow. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a nice day.